More money, more programs. For about a decade now, advocates of early childhood education programs have been asking lawmakers to sign off on a plan to take more money from investments earned under Mexico's nearly $19 billion land grant permanent fund to pay for more programs. Now, while there's broad support for early childhood learning, paying for it is controversial. The latest idea is to create a standalone endowment. Now, here to hash out the prospects is the Line Opinion Panel. We're joined this week by Line regular and UNM Law School Professor Serge Martinez. Good to have you back, sir. Another Line regular and principal of the Garrity Group, Tom Garrity, is with us. And two familiar faces that we're happy to have back at the table, starting with President and owner of Ciarza Social Digital, Crystal Ciarza, is with us, and President and owner of Collective Action Strategies, Giovanna Rossi. Giovanna, the Lujan administration would set aside, here's how it's going to go. They're going to set aside $300 million for 3 years, right? And it says it could pay out about $50 million a year once the endowment hits $1 billion. Now, that's not a lot of money, $50 million, but it's something to start with. Just on the back of the envelope thing they've sort of put out there, what's your initial gut reaction to the amounts, the 300 and the 50 million? Is that going to work in your mind?
Well, I think, first of all, it's worth saying that it's a step in the right direction.
Okay. That's, right? No, that's fair enough.
Like it's
Absolutely.
opening the door. I don't know that it's, going to be enough money to do everything
right.
that early childhood needs. And I don't think the governor's saying that it is, right? I think she's saying, look, we have the opportunity to really collaborate here, create a solution that we can get all of the people that we need behind this, that we're not in favor of the other proposals. And so she's taking that opportunity. And I think that's what a good leader needs to do, right? A good leader collaborates, finds the common ground, creates a solution that can move things forward. And so while the money is going to take probably longer than everybody wants to build up, it's opening the door to that.
That's right.
As an option.
It's a good point. I like the way you phrase that, because it is an opening, and maybe we should consider it just like that, not the be-all, end-all, but just that's where we're at. And Tom, I'm thinking about back in your days with Senate Democrats in the legislature many years ago, but John Arthur Smith likes this idea. That was probably the most shocking bit about the article. Reading it over was like, no bones about it. He was like, okay, let's get after this thing.
Senator John Arthur Smith, who has been very protective of the Land Grant Permanent Fund, really likes this particular idea. He likes the idea. I don't know if he really likes the idea, but
the
he
details
likes it. And then the governor has already expressed some support as well. So if depending how this bill is crafted, and there are a lot of ifs.
Right.
It could get a lot of traction and could get passed.
But let me ask you this: it has the imprimatur of John Arthur Smith. Isn't it just going to sail through now? Once old boy says it's okay, isn't it?
Well, it could be, but what I would say is the devil's in the details.
Okay.
To use that kind of cliche, because it really depends where that funding is going to go.
Yeah.
Is it going to go above the line, or is it going to go below the line? Below the line funding is things like capital outlay, teacher incentives. Above the line goes into the per pupil funding formula, and where that funding goes will really determine its fate, I think.
Good point there, Serge. As an educator, it's always difficult to look at dollar amounts and say, oh, this is enough, this is not enough. That's a hard thing. You go through this at the university all day long. It's a hard thing to do. But again, your initial reaction, what's your sense of it?
Yeah, like Giovanna was saying, it's a step in the right direction. And I think, what's the old saw? 50 million here, 50 million there.
Right.
Pretty soon we're talking about real money. And it's not nearly enough to do what we need done in the state. And I'm encouraged by the idea and the sort of support that it's been gathering. But as Tom was saying, the devil is in the details. And early childhood education it's easy to say, yes, we support that, but then what does that mean, right? I see the need for understanding how that is paid out and to who, making sure that the workforce that we're talking about, the teachers, are paid well, that we're being sensitive to what that means in Albuquerque versus what it means in other parts of our state. Being sensitive to whether, how interested folks are in participating in those programs. And we have a lot of folks who qualify now for those sorts of programs that are not accessing it, whether that's funding or a conscious choice or the understandable lack of desire of folks maybe to be part of an industry that pays significantly less. Right? People who do early childhood education are paid significantly less than our public school
It's been
teachers.
proven. That's right.
And
Yep.
so these are sorts of things that will need to be fleshed out, but to demonstrate a real commitment to not just, oh, here's a flashy dollar amount, but
That's right.
to understanding systemically, right? It's a systemic problem in New Mexico that requires a real systemic solution and
That's
a
right.
real look at what that means to every person who participates in that. But I'm very much encouraged by it. I'm a big fan of
Crystal,
This sort of
interestingly, we can afford this $300 million right now. We're having good luck with oil and gas. But what happens if down the road, if those things start to shrink and then the equivalent money we can peel off for this early childhood just starts to shrink as well, and suddenly it just doesn't look like all that much for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Is there a danger of that here? Because again, $300 million being taken off the table.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money, you know?
It will be dangerous if the endowment or those that are, administering the endowment, or even legislators at this point, don't think of an efficient strategy to actually continue funding, continue it as a funding source. And most importantly, the programs and the nonprofits or the vendors that would actually be supporting, or the entities that would be supporting this actual execution of an early childhood education, whatever it might be, the department, a program, et cetera. I thought it was really fascinating about how even just looking, where does the money actually go? It would be obviously collaborating with CYFD, Department of Health, and Department of Education. But one thing that's really left out, and this is something that I'm feeling like I'm commonly saying again and again and again when I'm on the line, is we have to remember about the people. The people have to be as engaged as the government when it comes to the funding.
That's right.
I mean, sometimes we have families and parents that don't actually see the love for learning or the love for education, and so we can spend all this money or debate about how long we can have an endowment towards early childhood education, but we have to make sure that the parent's willing to get the child in the venue in the first place. So I am, for example, I was speaking to a former secretary of CYFD,
Okay.
and I asked her, I said, well, it's kind of obvious who it was, and I said, so
Right.
what do you think the problems are when it comes to what's your next venture? And she goes, sometimes the problem's not actually the government entity, sometimes it's actually influencing in the home. So, at the end of the day, we have to think about, is the money going to produce some type of ROI towards the child that will benefit from the education?
Gotcha. That's interesting there too. That perspective of that former secretary is interesting as well. Giovanna, interesting when you think about, there's another idea floating out there, and that is an actual department for early childhood education. And it seems like if we step back from all this and look at it, like a lot of roads are starting to meet at once here about early childhood education. There's money potentially coming, there's a department potentially coming, there's a department head potentially, you know what I mean? And really getting a solid look at early childhood.
Yeah.
Again, does that feel like momentum to you? Is this the way we should be going? And
I mean, yeah, and so when we talk about early childhood, there's a whole lot going on there, right?
Right.
So
It's a big old bucket. Exactly.
So there's 0 to 5, which we know when we get kids 0 to 5, their brains develop better and all kinds of great things happen. And then there's the other sort of 5 to 8-year-olds that need actual education.
Right.
But I feel like the 0 to 5 is a little bit of a different story. It's more child care and learning, but child care. Parents need child care. So I think
Good
it's
deal.
worth looking at the early childhood ecosystem in New Mexico as a whole in the context of economic development and workforce development. Because when we look at, what are we really talking about? Babies, 0 to 5. We're talking about babies and toddlers, really. We're not saying we're not really talking about learning to read as much as the play-based childcare stuff that we really need with the 0 to 5. And so when we look at that need, we're really saying, what do parents need? And so to Crystal's point, the parents need to be involved, and a lot of parents don't have access to high quality childcare. So it is something to look at as far as what the parents need, but it's also a case of, like I said, the context of workforce development, economic development, workplaces.
Right.
So our workplaces, offering solutions as well to support parents with what they need.
We're finally having that conversation, aren't we? There's a lot of folks having a more vigorous conversation about just what you're saying.
Yeah, I think we are, but I think it's not a cohesive conversation.
Right.
But I'm encouraged with what's happening and the kind of the longer term planning that is happening.
Let me finish with Tom here, about 60 seconds left. By the way, I should just to sharpen a quick point I just made there. That department is happening, that early childhood education. It's not an idea, it's coming. What's interesting about this is this fund wouldn't need a constitutional amendment, Tom. It's interesting. And what the potential danger you could see here is once people get behind closed doors and start trying to figure out which direction this money is going to go, because it's not as restrictive as the permanent fund stuff. Is any danger there? Is there a possibility we could have a little hiccup down the road there once the money starts getting doled out?
Fit, perhaps. Yeah, there's a lot of potential for, I mean, just because you have a department identified, just because you have a cabinet secretary, you need the strategic direction.
Right.
And I think, really identifying how to use the funding, before you have that strategic direction, it sets it up for failure.
There's
Right.
also
Please.
a really important point about who is going to get the funding, right? So publicly funded child care and education centers only, or community-based as well. And that has been a really big discussion with the land grant permanent fund conversation, and now will be a conversation here as well. And we have such a delicate system and infrastructure here for early childhood that if you start playing with pieces and not the whole thing, it can really damage it, like we've seen in other states. That's actually happened, and we need to learn from what other states have done and
right.
what's happened in
We're
other
brand new. That's right. Early childhood stuff. Have to hit the pause button there, but I can guarantee you we'll pick up the conversation in the coming months. Up next, we investigate the blue-green algae blooms that closed a pair of popular New Mexico lakes this summer.